Today, congressional Democrats on the verge of passing a $700 billion plus bill on climate, energy, healthcare. It came together after Senators Chuck Schumer, Joe Manchin finally reached an agreement following months of tense negotiations. Joining me now, Congressman Pete Sessions, a Republican from Texas. Congressman, welcome. We're glad to have you. You have called this bill a green light for more inflation, which is obviously exactly the opposite of its intended purpose. Why do you say it's going to make inflation worse?
Well, it's going to make inflation worse because it's going to place a great amount of pressure, not just on the free enterprise system, but the people who actually make businesses work and run. The taxes that will be placed on the minimum tax of 15%, about 70% of that, they say, comes directly out of manufacturing. Why manufacturing? Because manufacturing has added jobs, new equipment, and opportunities as of late to this country to compete against China, and they are the ones that invested in their company, and so the tax code allowed them, because they were spending money on business items, machinery, people, they will now have to go to a minimum 15% tax, which competes against their ability to be able to hire more people and thus make America competitive with the world.
Congressman, correct me, though, if I'm wrong. I mean, don't these businesses have to have at least $1 billion in revenue to be considered?
Well, let me assure you that there are a lot of these that are pass-through companies where they go and form these, and going up the chain, it still will require them to pay taxes. So I'm going to stand by what has been written by economists. A lot of it comes out of the manufacturing sector of this country.
Congressman, I want to ask you, what if for a family, I'm just speaking this, that's running a small business that doesn't have $1 billion in revenue, that is paying taxes? Do you understand the anger coming from the small business community saying, hey, I pay, my business pays, how come these bigger companies have gotten away with this for so long?
Well, Texas is ground zero for lots of these companies. I've never heard someone say that. As a matter of fact, they say that they would like to have freedom to grow their business and not have the kinds of government interference. But this bill as an aggregate also does so much more. As you know, it places an onerous requirements on pharmaceutical companies that will be told what the government will pay. And then if there's not an agreement, they will tax that product at 95%. This will put a chilling effect on pharmaceutical companies putting R&D to work to solve new problems that are in the marketplace. And I, for one, have a family that needs much research and development and needs these new products that take up to 10 years, go through all the FDA trials, and they do have a cost to them.
But they say longer term, by the fact that people, citizens, will be paying less, doesn't that even out in our system somehow?
Well, I don't think it does, because what it did is it killed the companies that go and produce the newest products. It's not related to necessarily older products. If we wanted to take the example that would be most apparent, it would be with one company that provides these services where they bought a patent for $17 billion. They're having to amortize $17 billion. That's the world of pharmaceuticals today. And yet the government doesn't like, nor do consumers, nor do I like how much they are paying for some of these drugs. But in aggregate, it will harm the marketplace. And I think that negotiation, while it may sound good, where it harms the ability to go and create what is next, it will be trouble for the country.
Congressman, so what would you have done then in an inflation package? I mean, what is the Republican plan to fight inflation if what's being considered now are the wrong steps?
Well, that's an easy question. As you know, you have just seen where inflation, quote, was reduced, a little easing, and that's because gas prices fell. Gas prices are still almost double, $1.75 more, as a result of this administration's actions against the energy industry. If you want to not have inflation like you've got, you would have put money available to people to go to work. If you did not want to have inflation, you would not have put $120 billion a month into the economy that we take out as loans that compete against people not just going to work, but making this government work. And lastly, you would open up, so to speak, the energy industry and make it more available, or at least the way it was, to where we kept gas prices to where they had been level. This is an obvious and intentional thing, and that's why I say the Democrats, this administration, make friends with inflation. Government spending, control of the energy markets, and telling people to stay at home. Each of these are recipes for a squeeze on the free enterprise system and people working, and so prices escalated as the number of workers decreased.
All right, Congressman, I'd love to continue the conversation another day, but I have to ask you about the other big news of the day. Former President Trump calling for the unsealing of documents related to the FBI search of his Mar-a-Lago estate. Trump indicating he won't oppose unsealing those documents. His attorneys have until 3 p.m. Eastern time today to formally respond to the court. The Washington Post reporting federal investigators were looking for classified documents related to nuclear weapons. What was your reaction when you heard that?
Well, my reaction initially is that they had an at-night magistrate, not even a federal judge, who signed the warrant, and yet they had time to think this through. They considered it essential to national security. I don't know why they would go and share that information with a non-Article 3 federal judge. And when you start going to get magistrates to approve documents to go to a former president's house, that raises questions. So am I wanting to know what happened? Yes, I am, and I hope it is released, and we all need to know a little bit more about this, because on the surface, it's very disturbing.
It's disturbing all around. Current FBI Director Chris Wray blasting unfounded attacks on the Bureau's integrity. You called this raid political thuggery. What evidence do you have to support that?
Well, I believe it was political thuggery when you, by the evidence that we had at the time, when you send agents armed where they tell people they have to get out of the house, where they're not allowed to see what's going on, where they evidently go into areas that they did not believe, I believe they knew that they were not in there, and you have a magistrate sign this warrant who is probably appointed for 3 or 4 years, that is not, to me, the way you do things. I think the way you do things is the Attorney General or the FBI Director directly confront Trump's lawyers and telling them that it's 0 hour and that they need to produce the documents if that's what they needed, not simply show up and do what they did.
Congressman, the idea was that the subpoena, which is now universally recognized, has been in everyone's hands, that needed to have it since June.
You know, perhaps that may be true, perhaps, and we will find that out. What I would suggest to you is I think there are other ways to do this, and I would hope that it would not be because you go to a former president's home. I think I would have felt the same way had this been Mrs. Clinton when she had her 30,000 emails that were available. I don't think that's the way we need to do business in this country.
Congressman Pete Sessions, thank you for the time. Appreciate the conversation.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.